demanding she terminate the pregnancy. "The child will be weak," Lord Brennan declares. "We need a different mate for the king, one with proper bloodlines." Celeste's hand moves protectively over her stomach as silver eyes meet hers across the chamber. Her king is about to snap. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. Celeste Munro had never imagined her 20th birthday would end with her kneeling before a king. But then again, she had never imagined a lot of things that had happened in the last 72 hours. 3 days ago, she had been a nobody Omega in the Crescent Moon Pack, invisible and unremarkable. Her virginity, a source of shame among wolves who viewed sexual experience as a measure of worth. Now she was in the throne room of the Northern Palace, surrounded by marble columns and tapestries depicting ancient battles, with the most powerful alpha in existence, staring at her like she was the answer to a question he had been asking for centuries. King Thaddeus Ravencroft sat on his throne, his massive frame making the ornate chair look almost delicate. His silver eyes, an unusual color that marked him as royalty, tracked her every movement with predatory focus. He was beautiful in the way a storm was beautiful, dangerous and compelling and impossible to look away from. His dark hair fell just past his shoulders, and the sharp angles of his face would have seemed cruel if not for the intelligence burning in his gaze. He wore black from head to toe, simple clothing that somehow made him look more regal than any crown could. Celeste kept her eyes lowered, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had been brought here against her will, dragged from her pack's territory by royal guards who had refused to explain anything beyond the king demands your presence. The journey had taken 3 days, and during that time, no one would tell her why the Alpha King would possibly want a worthless Omega like her. She had spent the entire trip terrified that this was some kind of punishment. Perhaps her pack had done something to offend the crown, and she was being offered as a sacrifice. Perhaps the king needed someone to execute publicly as an example. Perhaps she had somehow broken a law she did not even know existed. The possibilities had churned through her mind until she felt sick with anxiety. But now, standing in his throne room with those silver eyes burning into her, Celeste was beginning to suspect the truth was something else entirely. Something that made her skin flush hot, and her Omega nature sit up and take notice in a way it never had before. The mate bond. It hit her like a physical force the moment their eyes met, a golden thread snapping into place between her chest and his, thrumming with recognition and need and absolute certainty. Oh, goddess! The Alpha King was her mate. Celeste's knees went weak, and she swayed. Immediately, Thaddeus was there, moving faster than should have been possible for someone his size. He caught her before she could fall, his hand strong and warm against her arms, and the contact made the bond flare so brightly that she gasped. His scent surrounded her, pine and smoke, and something wild and ancient that made her wolf, her quiet, submissive wolf, keen with longing. "Mine," her wolf whispered. "Ours. Mate." No, Celeste thought desperately. This could not be happening. She was nobody. She was nothing. She was a 20-year-old virgin Omega who had never even been kissed because no one in her pack had wanted her. How could she possibly be mated to a king? Thaddeus pulled her closer, steadying her, and Celeste found herself pressed against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through the thin fabric of her travel-stained dress. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, could feel the barely restrained power in his body. When she dared to look up, she found him staring down at her with an expression of such fierce possessiveness that it stole her breath. "You feel it?" he said. His voice was deep and rough, sending shivers down her spine. "The bond. You feel it too." Celeste wanted to deny it, wanted to say that this was all some terrible mistake, but she could not lie. Not when the bond was singing between them, demanding acknowledgement, demanding acceptance. "Yes," she whispered. "I feel it. Good." Thaddeus's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek with surprising gentleness. "Then you understand why you are here? You are mine, little Omega. You have always been mine. I have been searching for you for 3 centuries. 3 centuries." The words made Celeste's head spin. She had known the Alpha King was old, ancient, even by wolf standards, but hearing it stated so plainly was overwhelming. He had been alive for 300 years, had ruled for most of that time, and he had spent all those years searching for his mate. For her. "I do not understand," Celeste managed, her voice trembling. "Why me? I am nobody. I have nothing to offer a king. You have everything to offer." Thaddeus's silver eyes held hers captive. "You have yourself, your heart, your soul. You are the one person in all of existence that the moon goddess created specifically for me. That makes you the most valuable thing in my kingdom." The words should have been romantic, should have made her feel cherished and wanted. Instead, they terrified her, because Celeste knew what happened to Omegas who made it above their station. They were resented, scorned, whispered about as social climbers who had trapped their alphas through manipulation or trickery. She had seen it happen in her own pack when a low-ranking Omega had made it a mid-level alpha. The poor woman had been made miserable by the constant gossip and subtle cruelty until she had fled the pack entirely. And that had been over a simple beta to alpha pairing. This was a king, the most powerful alpha in the northern territories, the wolf that every other pack bowed to. If Celeste accepted this bond, if she became his queen, she would face scrutiny and judgment from thousands of wolves who would all believe she was unworthy. "I need time," Celeste said, pulling away from his touch, even though it physically hurt to do so. The bond protested, sending sharp pangs through her chest, but she forced herself to step back. "This is too much. I cannot just accept this without thinking, without understanding what it means." Thaddeus's expression darkened, and for a moment, Celeste saw the predator beneath the civilized exterior. His alpha nature did not like being denied, did not like his Omega pulling away, but then he took a deep breath, visibly controlling himself, and nodded once. "Very well, you may have time. But Celeste, understand this. The bond exists whether you accept it or not. You are mine, and I am yours. That is not something that time or distance can change." He gestured to someone behind her, and Celeste turned to see a woman approaching. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This is Helena," Thaddeus said. "She will be your lady-in-waiting, your guide while you adjust to palace life. She will answer your questions and help you understand what it means to be queen." Helena bowed respectfully to Celeste, which felt bizarre and wrong. "My lady," she said warmly, "it is an honor to serve you. Please, come with me. I will show you to your chambers." Celeste followed Helena out of the throne room in a daze, too overwhelmed to do anything but obey. As they walked through corridor after corridor of polished marble and elegant tapestries, Helena kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out important rooms and telling her about the palace staff. But Celeste barely heard any of it. Her mind was spinning with the reality of her situation. She was the Alpha King's mate. She was going to be queen, and she had absolutely no idea how to survive it. The chambers Helena led her to were more luxurious than anything Celeste had ever seen. There was a sitting room with plush furniture and a fireplace, a bedroom with a massive 4-poster bed covered in silk sheets, and a bathroom with an actual bathtub that looked like it could fit 4 people. Everything was decorated in shades of cream and gold, elegant and expensive and utterly foreign to someone who had spent her entire life in a tiny room she shared with 2 other Omegas. "These will be your rooms until the mating ceremony," Helena explained, gesturing around the space. After you accept the king, you will move into his personal chambers. But for now, this is yours. No one will enter without your permission, not even the king himself." Celeste sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs finally giving out. "When is the ceremony supposed to happen?" "Tomorrow night, at the full moon." Helena's expression was sympathetic. "I know this is overwhelming, my lady, but truly the king has been waiting so long for you. He is a good man, a fair ruler. He will treat you well." Celeste wanted to believe that, but the terror of not being good enough, of failing at something so important, was crushing her. "I have never even kissed anyone," she admitted quietly. "I do not know how to be with an alpha. How can I possibly be a queen when I know nothing about pleasure or intimacy?" Helena sat beside her on the bed, taking her hand gently. "Being a queen is not about sexual experience, child. It is about character, about compassion and strength and wisdom. Those things cannot be taught in a bedroom. As for the physical side," she smiled knowingly, "I think you will find that the king is very skilled at teaching." The comment made Celeste's face burn with embarrassment, but there was warmth in it too, a flicker of curiosity about what it would be like to be with Thaddeus. She had never allowed herself to think much about sex before, too focused on surviving her pack's disdain to imagine pleasure. But now, with the mate bond humming between her and the king, she found her mind wandering to dangerous places. What would his hands feel like on her bare skin? What would it be like to have his mouth on hers, to feel his weight pressing her into soft sheets? Would he be gentle with her virginity, or would his alpha nature demand he claim her completely? The thoughts made heat pool low in her belly, and Celeste squirmed uncomfortably. Helena noticed and smiled. "The bond makes you want him," she said matter-of-factly. "That is natural. Your body knows he is your mate, even if your mind needs time to catch up. Do not be ashamed of that desire." "I am terrified," Celeste confessed. "What if I am not good enough? What if I disappoint him?" "Then you will learn and grow," Helena said simply. "But Celeste, I have served King Thaddeus for 30 years. I have seen him with dozens of potential mates, political matches that would have strengthened alliances or brought wealth to the kingdom. He rejected every single one because they were not his true mate, and now he has found you. Do you truly think he will be disappointed by the woman the moon goddess chose for him?" The words helped, a little. Celeste spent the rest of the afternoon talking with Helena, learning about palace protocol and what would be expected of her. She bathed in the enormous tub, washing away days of travel grime, and changed into a simple but elegant dress that had been laid out for her. And through it all, she could feel Thaddeus through the bond, a constant warm presence that told her exactly where he was in the palace, what he was feeling. He was in his office, she realized, dealing with some kind of crisis that had his emotions cycling between frustration and determination. Even from a distance, even without accepting the bond fully, she could sense him. It was strange and intimate and comforting in a way she had not expected. As evening approached, Helena brought her dinner on a silver tray, but Celeste could barely eat. Her nerves were too frayed, her mind too full of questions and fears. What if she could not go through with the ceremony tomorrow? What if she disappointed Thaddeus so badly that he rejected her? A knock on the door startled her out of her spiraling thoughts. Helena went to answer it, and Celeste heard a familiar deep voice speaking quietly. A moment later, Thaddeus entered her sitting room, and the sight of him made her heart skip a beat. He had changed clothes since this morning, now wearing dark pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. His silver hair was tied back, and he looked less like a king and more like a man, approachable and real. "May I sit with you?" he asked, his tone careful. "I know you asked for time, but I thought we might talk." Get to know each other before tomorrow?" Celeste nodded, not trusting her voice. Thaddeus settled into the chair across from her, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. He was even more beautiful up close, his features sharp and aristocratic, his silver eyes holding centuries of wisdom and experience. She must seem like a child to him, she thought. 20 years old to his 300. What could he possibly see in her that would make him want her? "Tell me about yourself," Thaddeus said gently. "Your pack, your family. What were your dreams before all of this?" Celeste hesitated, then decided that honesty was the only option. "There is not much to tell. My parents died when I was young. I was raised by the pack, barely tolerated. I was the smallest Omega, the weakest. No one wanted me for anything, not even basic pack tasks. I spent most of my time in the pack library, reading about places I would never see and lives I would never live. Something fierce and protective flashed in Thaddeus's eyes. They were fools. Anyone who could not see your value was blind." "You do not know me," Celeste protested. "You do not know if I have any value at all." "I know you are my mate," Thaddeus said firmly. "I know the moon goddess does not make mistakes. I know that you have survived 20 years in a pack that did not appreciate you, and you emerged with kindness still intact. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his intense gaze never leaving hers. "Celeste, I have lived for 3 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have fought in wars and negotiated peace treaties. I have ruled over thousands of wolves, made decisions that affected entire territories. And in all that time, I have never felt complete. There has always been something missing, some essential piece of myself that I could not find." His hand reached out, palm up, an invitation. "Then I felt the bond form when you entered my throne room, and for the first time in 300 years, I felt whole. You are not nothing, little Omega. You are everything." Celeste stared at his outstretched hand, at the offer he was making. She could feel the sincerity rolling off him in waves through the bond, could sense that he truly believed every word he was saying. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in his. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm, and she saw Thaddeus's pupils dilate in response. "I am afraid," she admitted in a whisper. "I do not know how to be what you need." "Then we will learn together," Thaddeus said. "Celeste, I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be yourself, the woman who reads in libraries and dreams of other places, the woman who survived neglect and emerged strong. That is who I want. That is who I need." They talked for hours after that, the conversation flowing more easily as Celeste began to relax. Thaddeus told her about his childhood, about the weight of becoming king so young, about the loneliness of ruling without a mate to share the burden. He made her laugh with stories about diplomatic disasters and court intrigue. He asked her about her favorite books, and when she mentioned a rare historical text she had only heard about but never read, he promised to find it for her. By the time he stood to leave, the moon high in the sky outside her window, Celeste realized something surprising. She liked him, genuinely liked him, beyond the pull of the mate bond. He was intelligent and thoughtful and surprisingly funny. He listened when she spoke, asked follow-up questions, treated her opinions as valuable, even when they differed from his own. "Tomorrow," he said as he paused in the doorway, "tomorrow you become mine officially. But, Celeste, know that even if you need more time after the ceremony, even if you are not ready for everything that entails, I will wait. Your comfort matters more to me than my desires." The words should have reassured her. Instead, they made heat curl through her body, made her wonder what his desires actually were. She had seen the way he looked at her, the hunger carefully controlled beneath the surface. What would happen when that control finally broke? Sleep did not come easily that night. Celeste lay in the enormous bed, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. The mate bond hummed between her and Thaddeus, and she could feel him in his own chambers, awake and restless like she was. Several times she almost reached out through the bond, almost tried to communicate with him that way, but she held back, uncertain and afraid. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Helena and a team of other women arrived early to help her bathe and dress. The ceremony gown was exquisite, made of white silk that clung to her curves before flowing out in a long train. They styled her auburn hair in an elaborate updo, leaving a few curls to frame her face, and applied subtle makeup that made her pale skin glow and her green eyes stand out. When Celeste finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a queen. She looked like someone who might actually belong at Thaddeus's side. The ceremony itself took place in the palace's grand hall, with hundreds of wolves in attendance. Celeste stood at the entrance, her hands shaking, her heart racing so fast she thought she might faint. Then the doors opened, and she saw Thaddeus waiting for her at the other end of the long aisle, and everything else faded away. He was dressed in formal attire, all black with silver accents that matched his eyes, and he was looking at her like she was the only person in the entire world. Celeste walked toward him, each step feeling both too fast and too slow. When she finally reached him, Thaddeus took her hands, and the bond between them blazed so brightly that several wolves in the audience gasped. The officiant, an elderly wolf who served as the king's advisor, began the traditional ceremony. He spoke about the sacred nature of true mates, about the moon goddess's wisdom in pairing souls. He asked if there were any who objected to the union, and the hall remained silent. Then it was time for the vows. Thaddeus went first, his silver eyes never leaving hers as he spoke. I, Thaddeus Ravencroft, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, take you, Celeste Monroe, as my mate, my queen, my equal in all things. I vow to protect you, to cherish you, to stand beside you through every challenge and celebrate every victory. I vow to honor the gift the moon goddess has given me in you, and to spend every day of my life proving myself worthy of it. Then it was Celeste's turn. Her voice shook as she spoke, but she forced herself to say the words clearly, to mean them with every fiber of her being. I, Celeste Monroe, take you, Thaddeus Ravencroft, as my mate, my king, my partner. I vow to support you, to challenge you when needed, to offer strength when you are weary. I vow to learn and grow beside you, to become the queen your people deserve. I vow to trust in the moon goddess's wisdom, and to give you my whole heart. The officiant smiled. Then, by the power vested in me by the moon goddess and the ancient laws of our kind, I pronounce you mated. Let the bond be sealed. Thaddeus pulled Celeste into his arms and kissed her for the first time. It was not gentle or tentative. It was claiming, possessive, a brand that announced to everyone watching that she was his and he was hers. The mate bond exploded between them, fully formed and unbreakable, and Celeste felt it settle deep in her chest, warm and permanent. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the entire hall erupted in cheers and howls of celebration. The feast that followed was overwhelming, with course after course of elaborate food and wine that flowed freely. Wolves from dozens of packs had come to witness their king's mating, and they all wanted to congratulate Celeste, to pledge their loyalty to their new queen. She smiled and thanked them, playing the role as best she could, while Thaddeus remained a constant presence at her side, his hand on her lower back, his body, language making it clear that she was under his protection. As the evening wore on, and the wine loosened inhibitions, the comments from the guests became more pointed. I hope the king does not break her on the wedding night, one alpha said, With a laugh, "She looks so delicate." Thaddeus's hand tightened on Celeste's waist, a warning growl rumbling in his chest. Show some respect. Another wolf, emboldened by drink, leaned in and said, "You have patience, your majesty. If I had been waiting 3 centuries for my mate, I would not have made it through the ceremony before claiming her." The crude comment made Celeste's face burn with embarrassment, but Thaddeus's response was cold and deadly. "One more disrespectful word about my queen, and you will find yourself banned from this palace permanently." The threat worked. The wolves backed off, but the damage was done. Celeste was hyper-aware now of the expectations, of what everyone assumed would happen tonight. Thaddeus was supposed to claim her, to consummate their mating publicly through the bond so that everyone would know she was truly his. And she was terrified. As the feast finally wound down and guests began to leave, Thaddeus leaned close and murmured in her ear, "Are you ready to retire, my queen? We do not have to do anything tonight. We can simply sleep, get to know each other better." But Celeste could feel the tension in his body, could sense through the bond how much he wanted her, how hard he was working to control himself. And she realized something important. She did not want him to wait. She did not want their first night together to be overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. She wanted to embrace this new life, this new reality, with courage. "I am ready," she said quietly. "But Thaddeus, I need you to know. I have never done this before. I do not know what to do." His silver eyes softened with understanding. "I know, little Omega, and I will teach you. I will make sure your first time is everything it should be. Trust me?" Celeste nodded, her heart in her throat. "Yes, I trust you." Thaddeus led her through the palace to his personal chambers, and Celeste was struck by how different they were from her temporary rooms. These were darker, more masculine, with heavy furniture and thick furs covering the massive bed. Everything smelled like him, pine and smoke and male, and her Omega nature responded immediately, her body preparing itself for what was coming. Thaddeus closed and locked the door behind them, then turned to face her. The civilized veneer he had maintained all evening was cracking, his alpha nature rising to the surface. His silver eyes had darkened to storm gray, and she could see the predator watching her, deciding how to proceed. "Come here," he said, his voice rough with barely controlled desire. Celeste moved toward him on shaking legs. When she was close enough, Thaddeus reached out and began unpinning her hair, letting the auburn waves fall around her shoulders. His fingers trailed down her neck, over her collarbone, and she shivered at the contact. "You are so beautiful," he murmured. "I've been imagining this moment since I first saw you." His hands moved to the buttons at the back of her dress, undoing them slowly, deliberately. The fabric loosened and began to slip, and Celeste had to fight the urge to cover herself as it pulled at her feet, leaving her in just her thin undergarments. Thaddeus stepped back to look at her, his gaze raking over her body with such heat that she felt it like a physical touch. "Perfect," he said roughly. "You are absolutely perfect, Celeste." She wanted to argue, wanted to point out every flaw, but the look in his eyes stopped her. He truly believed what he was saying. To him, she was perfect. "I do not know what to do," she admitted again, her voice small. "Show me?" Thaddeus smiled, slow and predatory. "Oh, little Omega, I am going to enjoy teaching you so many things. But first," he stepped closer, backing her toward the bed. "First, you need to understand something important. You are mine now, mine to touch, mine to taste, mine to claim, and I have waited 300 years to find you. So when I finally take you, when I make you mine in every possible way, it is not going to be gentle." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent liquid heat flooding through her body, made her core clench with need. She bumped against the edge of the bed and sat down abruptly, and Thaddeus followed her down, pressing her back into the furs. His body covered hers, hard everywhere she was soft, his weight both terrifying and arousing. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his tongue demanding entry. Celeste opened for him instinctively, and the kiss turned savage, consuming. His hands roamed her body, cupping her breasts through her thin chemise, thumbs brushing over nipples that hardened instantly. She gasped into his mouth, sensation overwhelming her, and felt him smile against her lips. So responsive, he murmured. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? Knowing I get to be the first and only man to touch you like this? His mouth moved to her neck, teeth scraping over her pulse point, and Celeste arched beneath him. Thaddeus, she breathed, not even sure what she was asking for. I know, he soothed. I know what you need, little Omega. Just let me take care of you. He pulled her chemise over her head, burying her completely, and Celeste had to fight every instinct not to cover herself. But Thaddeus was looking at her like she was a feast he was about to devour, and the hunger in his gaze made her bold. His mouth found her breast, tongue circling her nipple before sucking it between his lips, and Celeste cried out at the sensation. But then he pulled back, his silver eyes dark with hunger. Before we go further, he said roughly, I want your mouth on me. I want to teach you how to please your king. He stood beside the bed, magnificent and naked, his thick length standing proud. Celeste's eyes widened as she realized what he was asking. She had never done anything like this before, did not even know how to begin. Thaddeus saw her hesitation, and his expression softened slightly. Come here, little Omega. Kneel before me. Celeste slid off the bed and dropped to her knees before him, her heart racing. Up close, he was even more intimidating, and she had no idea how she was supposed to fit him in her mouth. Thaddeus's hand came to cup her face gently. Open, he commanded. Stick out your tongue. She obeyed, and he guided himself to her mouth, rubbing the thick head against her tongue. The taste was masculine and slightly salty, foreign but not unpleasant. Lick me, he ordered. Get me wet with your spit. Celeste did as he said, her tongue exploring tentatively. Thaddeus groaned at the sensation, his hand sliding into her hair. Good girl. Now, open wider. I'm going to put myself in your mouth, and you are going to take as much as you can. He pushed forward slowly, and Celeste's jaw stretched to accommodate him. She could only take a few inches before she felt her gag reflex trigger, and she pulled back with a gasp. Thaddeus's hand tightened in her hair, not painful, but firm. Again, he said, and this time, do not pull away. Breathe through your nose and relax your throat. Celeste tried again, and this time when he pushed deeper, she focused on breathing, on relaxing. He went further than before, hitting the back of her throat, and she gagged slightly but did not pull away. His grip in her hair tightened approvingly. That is my good Omega, taking me so well. He began to move, thrusting shallowly, his hand controlling the pace through her hair. Celeste felt tears prick her eyes as he stretched her mouth, but there was something deeply satisfying about it too, about giving him this pleasure, about submitting so completely. Use your tongue, Thaddeus instructed, his voice strained, and hollow your cheeks. Yes, just like that. Goddess, your mouth feels incredible. He pushed deeper, and this time Celeste gagged harder, her throat convulsing around him. She tried to pull back, but his hand held her firmly in place. Gag on it, he commanded roughly. Do not pull away. Take what I give you. Celeste's eyes watered as he held her there, his length buried in her throat, cutting off her air. She could not breathe, could not think, could only submit to his control. Just when she thought she might pass out, he pulled back, letting her gasp for air. Beautiful, he groaned, looking down at her tear-stained face. You look so perfect like this. On your knees, choking on your king's cock." The crude words made heat flood through her, and she realized with shock that she was enjoying this, enjoying the complete surrender, the way he was using her mouth for his pleasure. He pushed back in, deeper this time, and Celeste relaxed her throat as much as she could. His hand twisted in her hair, holding her head in place as he thrust harder, chasing his pleasure. "That is it, little Omega. Just like that. Let me use this pretty mouth. Swallow around me." His hand held her head down firmly as he pushed to the back of her throat again, and Celeste felt her throat contract involuntarily, gagging, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she did not pull away. She stayed exactly where he held her, submitting completely, and felt his satisfaction through the bond. Finally, he pulled free with a groan, his breathing ragged. "Perfect," he said roughly. "You did so well for your first time. Now, get back on the bed. I need to be inside you." Celeste climbed back onto the bed on shaking legs, her jaw aching, her throat sore, but feeling strangely proud. She had pleased him. She had given him something he wanted. His free hand slid down her stomach. "Let me hear you. I want to know exactly what you like." His fingers found the heat between her thighs, and he groaned at what he discovered there. "So wet already. Sucking me made you need this, did it not? Your body knows what it needs." He circled her entrance with one finger, teasing, "Not entering yet. Tell me, Celeste. Tell me you want this." "I want it," she managed, her voice breathy and desperate. "Please, Thaddeus, please teach me." His finger pushed inside her, slow and careful, and Celeste gasped at the intrusion. It felt strange, foreign, but not painful. Thaddeus worked her carefully, adding a second finger, stretching her, preparing her for something much larger. All the while, his mouth continued its assault on her breasts, his teeth grazing sensitive skin, his tongue soothing the sting. Celeste felt pressure building inside her, something coiling tighter and tighter. Her hips moved instinctively, seeking friction, seeking more. "Thaddeus," she whimpered, "something is happening. I feel, you are close," he interrupted, his voice rough with satisfaction. "You are going to come for me, little Omega, and when you do, I want you to scream my name." His thumb found a bundle of nerves at the apex of her thighs, and the moment he pressed down, everything shattered. Pleasure crashed over her in waves, more intense than anything she had ever felt, and she did scream, his name torn from her throat as her body convulsed around his fingers. Thaddeus worked her through it, prolonging the sensation until she was shaking and oversensitive. "Beautiful," he murmured, withdrawing his fingers and bringing them to his mouth. He licked them clean, and the sight made Celeste whimper. "You taste like honey and need. I could feast on you for hours, but not tonight. Tonight, I need to be inside you. Tonight, I claim you completely." He stood and began removing his own clothes, revealing the body underneath. Celeste's eyes widened at the sight of him. He was all lean muscle and predatory grace, scars crossing his chest and abdomen, testament to centuries of battle. And when he finally pushed his pants down, freeing himself, she understood why he had warned her it would not be gentle. He was massive, thick, and hard, and there was no way that was going to fit inside her without pain. Thaddeus saw her expression and smiled reassuringly. "Your body was made for this, Celeste. Made for me. Trust that I will make it good for you." He moved back over her, positioning himself at her entrance, and Celeste felt panic spike. "Wait," she said. "Thaddeus, I am not ready. You need to stop thinking," he interrupted firmly. "You need to surrender to me, to let me take control. That is what your Omega nature is screaming for, is it not? To submit? To give yourself over to your Alpha?" The words sent a fresh wave of heat through her, and Celeste realized he was right. Her Omega nature did want to submit, wanted to let him take her however he wished. She forced herself to relax, to trust. "Okay," she whispered, "I am yours. Yes, you are, Thaddeus agreed. And it is time I showed you exactly what that means. He pushed forward slowly, carefully, and Celeste felt herself stretching to accommodate him. It hurt, a sharp pain as he broke through her virginity, but Thaddeus did not stop. He kept pushing until he was fully seated inside her, his body pressed against hers, his forehead resting against her shoulder as he fought for control. So tight, he groaned, "Goddess, Celeste, you feel perfect." He stayed still for a moment, letting her adjust, and Celeste tried to process the sensation. She felt impossibly full, stretched beyond what should have been possible, connected to him in the most intimate way imaginable. Through the bond, she could feel his pleasure, his satisfaction, his overwhelming need to move. "Please," she whispered, though she was not entirely sure what she was asking for. Thaddeus took it as permission. He withdrew almost completely before slamming back in, and Celeste cried out at the intensity. He set a brutal pace, all his carefully controlled gentleness abandoned now that he had her beneath him. His hands gripped her hips hard enough to bruise, holding her in place as he claimed her with a possessiveness that bordered on savage. "Mine," he growled against her neck. "Say it. Tell me you are mine, yours." Celeste gasped, her body overwhelmed by sensation. "I am yours, Thaddeus, only yours." The declaration seemed to break something in him. He flipped them suddenly, pulling her on top of him, and Celeste found herself straddling him, his thick length still buried deep inside her. "Ride me," he commanded, his hands on her hips guiding her movements. "Take what you need." Celeste moved experimentally, rising up and sinking back down, and the new angle made her gasp. It felt different this way, deeper somehow, and when she found the right rhythm, pleasure sparked through her. She moved faster, chasing that sensation, her hands braced on his chest for balance. "That is it," Thaddeus encouraged, his eyes locked on where their bodies joined. "Look at you, taking me so well. You were made for this, were you not? Made to be claimed by your king." The dirty words made her clench around him, and Thaddeus groaned, "Do that again." His hand moved between them, finding that bundle of nerves again, and Celeste shattered for the second time, her body convulsing around him as pleasure crashed over her. Before she could recover, Thaddeus had flipped them again, pressing her face down into the furs. "Get on your knees," he ordered roughly. "Show me that pretty ass." Celeste obeyed, her body responding to the command before her mind could process it. She presented herself to him and felt him line himself up before slamming back inside. The new angle was deeper, almost too much, and Celeste buried her face in the furs as he pounded into her with renewed intensity. "One more," he demanded. "Give me one more, Celeste. Show your king how good you can be." His hand fisted in her hair, pulling her head back, and the sharp pain mixed with pleasure in a way that drove her wild. She was going to come again, impossibly, the pressure building faster than before. "Thaddeus," she sobbed, "please, I cannot—" "Yes, you can," he interrupted, "and you will. Now, Celeste, come for me now." His other hand reached around to circle that sensitive bud, and Celeste screamed as she came apart for the third time. Her body clamped down on him so hard he roared, his own release finally breaking free. She felt him pulse inside her, filling her with his seed, marking her from the inside out as his. The bond blazed so brightly she could barely see, could barely think, could only feel the overwhelming rightness of being claimed completely by her mate. They collapsed together onto the furs, both panting, both trembling with aftershocks. Thaddeus gathered her close, pressing kisses to her sweat-dampened hair, murmuring words of praise and possession. "Perfect," he kept saying, "my perfect little Omega. Mine now. Mine forever." Celeste could not speak, too overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. But as she lay there in her mate's arms, feeling safe and claimed and utterly spent, she realized something important. She was not afraid anymore. She was exactly where she belonged. And tomorrow, when she woke as queen, she would face whatever came with courage, because she had Thaddeus beside her, and together they were unstoppable. Celeste woke to sunlight streaming through the heavy curtains, and the warm weight of an arm draped possessively across her waist. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back, the ceremony, the claiming, the overwhelming pleasure that had left her boneless and sated. She was in the king's bed. She was the queen now. Thaddeus was still asleep behind her, his breathing deep and even, his body curved protectively around hers. Celeste carefully shifted to look at him and found herself struck all over again by how beautiful he was. In sleep, the sharp edges of his face softened slightly, making him look younger, more approachable. His silver hair fell across his forehead, and she reached out without thinking to brush it back. His eyes opened immediately at her touch, those stunning silver eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "Good morning, my queen," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "How do you feel?" Celeste took inventory of her body and winced slightly. Sore. Everywhere. But it was a good kind of soreness, the kind that came with evidence of being thoroughly claimed. "I feel claimed," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. Thaddeus smiled, slow and satisfied. "Good, because you are. Every inch of you belongs to me now." His hand slid down her body possessively, coming to rest on her hip, and I plan to remind you of that fact frequently. The promise in his words made heat curl through her, despite her soreness. But before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. Thaddeus growled in annoyance. "What is it?" "Your Majesty," a male voice called from outside. "The council is requesting an audience with you and the Queen. They wish to formally meet her and discuss matters of state." "Tell them we will be there in an hour," Thaddeus called back, his eyes never leaving Celeste's face. "And make sure no one disturbs us until then." "Yes, Your Majesty." Once the footsteps faded, Thaddeus rolled on top of Celeste, pressing her into the mattress. "An hour," he said with a wicked smile. "That gives us time to christen the morning properly." "Thaddeus, I am sore," Celeste protested weakly, even as her body responded to his proximity. "I do not think I can—" "Then I will be gentle," he promised, his mouth finding her neck. "Let me worship my queen. Let me show you how much I treasure what you gave me last night." And he did worship her, his hands and mouth exploring every inch of her body with reverent attention. He took his time, building her pleasure slowly, until she was writhing beneath him, begging for release. When he finally entered her, it was with exquisite care, mindful of her soreness, but no less thorough in his claiming. He brought her to climax twice more before finding his own release, and by the time they finished, Celeste was boneless and glowing. They bathed together in the enormous tub, Thaddeus washing her hair and body with surprising tenderness. Then Helena arrived to help Celeste dress in her first outfit as queen, a deep blue gown that complemented her coloring and made her look regal and powerful. Thaddeus watched the entire process with possessive satisfaction, and when Celeste was finally ready, he offered her his arm. "Ready to face your new life, my queen?" Celeste took a deep breath and nodded. "As ready as I will ever be." The council chamber was an imposing room with a long table surrounded by high-backed chairs. 12 wolves sat waiting, their expressions ranging from curious to openly skeptical. Celeste recognized the type immediately. Nobles who had served the king for years and were not pleased about having their carefully ordered world disrupted by a nobody Omega who had suddenly become their queen. Thaddeus led her to the head of the table and pulled out a chair for her before taking his own seat. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority, "allow me to formally introduce my mate and your queen, Celeste Ravencroft." Several of the council members bowed their heads respectfully, but Celeste noticed others whose bows were perfunctory at best. One man in particular, an older alpha with gray streaking his dark hair, was staring at her with barely concealed disdain. "This is the Omega, Your Majesty?" he said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that. The one with no pack, no connections, no political value. Thaddeus's eyes went cold. "This is my mate, Lord Brennan, the one chosen for me by the moon goddess herself, and I suggest you remember that her value is not determined by politics or connections, but by the fact that she is mine." Lord Brennan had the sense to look chastened, but Celeste could see the resentment simmering beneath the surface. She had known this would happen, had prepared herself for it, but actually facing it was harder than she had anticipated. The meeting continued with various council members presenting matters that needed the king's attention: trade disputes, border conflicts, requests from smaller packs for assistance. Celeste listened carefully, trying to absorb everything, trying to understand the complexities of ruling. Occasionally, Thaddeus would glance at her, and she could feel his support through the bond, his absolute confidence in her. But then Lord Brennan spoke up again, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your Majesty, if I may raise a delicate matter, there are concerns among the noble families about the Queen's ability to produce strong heirs, an Omega with no notable bloodline, no proof of fertility. Some worry that the royal line might be weakened." The room went silent. Every eye turned to Celeste, and she felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. But before she could formulate a response, Thaddeus slammed his hand on the table with such force that several council members jumped. "The Queen's fertility is not up for discussion," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "and anyone who questions my mate's ability to produce heirs is questioning the moon goddess herself. I suggest you think very carefully before continuing that line of thought, Brennan. But Your Majesty," Brennan persisted, clearly emboldened by something, "the people have a right to know that their future rulers will be strong. Perhaps if the Queen were to submit to an examination by the royal healers, just to confirm, enough." Thaddeus stood, and the raw power that radiated from him made even Celeste's Omega nature want to bare her throat in submission. "My mate will not be examined like breeding stock. Her body belongs to me and me alone. And if I hear one more word questioning her worth, I will personally ensure that the speaker regrets it. Am I understood?" A chorus of "Yes, Your Majesty" echoed through the chamber, but as Celeste looked around the table, she saw the looks being exchanged, the subtle sneers. They did not respect her. They saw her as a weakness in their king, a mistake that would cost them all. The meeting finally ended, and Thaddeus led Celeste back to their chambers. She could feel his anger through the bond, the barely controlled fury at how his council had treated her. "I'm sorry," he said once they were alone. "I should have anticipated that they would be difficult. I should have protected you better." "You did protect me," Celeste said quietly. "But Thaddeus, we both knew this would happen. I am a nobody Omega. They have every right to question whether I am good enough to be queen." "They have no right," Thaddeus growled, pulling her into his arms. "You are my mate. That makes you the most important person in this kingdom, and anyone who cannot see that is a fool." "But what if they are right?" Celeste whispered, voicing the fear that had been growing in her chest. "What if I cannot produce strong heirs? What if I am too weak? What if I fail you?" Thaddeus pulled back to look at her, his silver eyes intense. "Listen to me, Celeste. I have lived for 3 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched countless alphas choose mates based on politics and bloodlines. And do you know what I have learned? That those matings almost always fail. Because power and bloodlines do not create strong bonds. Love does. Respect does. Partnership does. And that is what we have." He cupped her face gently. "You are my mate. You are my equal in all things. And if the moon goddess chose you for me, then I trust that any children we have will be exactly what they need to be. But even if we never have children, even if it is just you and me for the rest of my very long life, that will be enough. You will be enough. The words cracked something open in Celeste's chest, and she felt tears spill over. How do you always know exactly what to say? Because the bond lets me feel your fear, your doubts, and I will spend every day of our lives proving to you that they are unfounded. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Celeste felt the bond flare between them, warm and reassuring. Over the following weeks, Celeste threw herself into learning everything she needed to know about being queen. She spent hours with Helena and other advisors, studying history and politics and diplomacy. She attended every council meeting, forcing herself to speak up when she had thoughts or questions, refusing to be intimidated by the nobles who still looked at her with thinly veiled contempt. One afternoon, she was reviewing trade agreements in the library when Thaddeus found her surrounded by scrolls and ledgers. "You have been here for 6 hours," he observed, settling into the chair across from her. "When was the last time you ate?" Celeste looked up, startled. She had been so absorbed in her studies that she had lost track of time entirely. "I do not know. This morning, I think." Thaddeus stood and held out his hand. "Come, you need to rest." "But I am not finished. There are still 3 more trade agreements to review, and Helena said I should understand the economic implications before the next council meeting. I cannot afford to look foolish in front of Lord Brennan again." "Celeste," Thaddeus's voice was firm but gentle, "you are not going to master everything in a few weeks. Give yourself time to learn, and more importantly, give yourself time to breathe." He pulled her to her feet and led her to a private balcony that overlooked the palace gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Celeste felt some of her tension ease at the beauty of it. "I am trying so hard," she admitted quietly, "but it never feels like enough. Every time I think I am making progress, someone finds a new way to make me feel inadequate." "Then they are fools," Thaddeus said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, "because I see nothing but progress. I see a woman who arrived here terrified and uncertain, and in just a few weeks has begun to command respect through sheer determination and intelligence. Do you know what Elder Marcus told me yesterday?" Celeste shook her head, leaning back against his chest. "He said that you asked more insightful questions in one council meeting than some members have asked in their entire tenure. He said you have a gift for seeing connections others miss, for understanding how decisions in one area will affect others. That is not inadequacy, Celeste. That is brilliance." The praise made her throat tight with emotion. "I just want to be worthy of you," she whispered. "You already are," Thaddeus assured her, turning her to face him. "But if you need more convincing, allow me to demonstrate exactly how worthy I find you." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Celeste felt her worries melt away. When he finally pulled back, his silver eyes were dark with desire. "My chambers. Now." They barely made it inside before Thaddeus was on her, his hands urgent as he unlaced her dress and pushed it off her shoulders. "I have been thinking about this all day," he growled against her neck, "thinking about how you taste, how you feel wrapped around me, how beautiful you look when you come apart." Celeste gasped as his mouth found her breast, his tongue circling her nipple before sucking it between his lips. Her hands fisted in his hair, holding him close as pleasure sparked through her body. "Thaddeus," she breathed. "Tell me what you want," he demanded, his hand sliding between her thighs to find her already wet and ready. "Tell your king how you want to be claimed." The crude words made her clench around his fingers, and Celeste realized with surprise that she was not as shy as she had been weeks ago. She was learning to ask for what she wanted, learning to embrace her own desires. "I want you inside me," she said, meeting his eyes boldly. "I want you to take me hard and fast and make me forget everything except how good you make me feel." Thaddeus's eyes flared with approval. That is my good Omega, always so eager to please your Alpha. He lifted her easily, pinning her against the wall, and Celeste wrapped her legs around his waist. He entered her in one powerful thrust, and she cried out at the sensation, at the fullness, at the perfect rightness of having him inside her. Yes, she moaned, just like that. Thaddeus set a brutal pace, pounding into her with a desperation that told her he had needed this as much as she had. His mouth found hers, swallowing her cries as he drove them both toward completion. When her climax hit, it was explosive, her body clamping down on him so hard he groaned her name. His own release followed seconds later, and they collapsed together onto the floor, both panting and trembling. You are perfect, Thaddeus murmured against her hair. Absolutely perfect. And at night, she lost herself in Thaddeus's arms again and again, learning her own body and his, discovering what made him growl with approval and what made him lose control completely. He taught her pleasure in dozens of different ways, and each time the bond between them grew stronger, more unbreakable, but the challenges kept coming. Lord Brennan seemed determined to undermine her at every opportunity, questioning her decisions, suggesting she should leave certain matters to those with more experience. Other nobles followed his lead, treating her with barely disguised disdain, and whispers began to spread throughout the palace about the weak Omega Queen who had trapped their king. It came to a head during a formal dinner with visiting dignitaries from a neighboring kingdom. Celeste was seated beside Thaddeus at the head of the table, trying to navigate the complex social dynamics of a state dinner. Everything was going reasonably well until one of the visiting alphas, emboldened by wine, made a crude comment. I am surprised your Majesty settled for such an unremarkable Omega. I would have thought the King of the Northern Territories could do better. The room went silent. Celeste felt humiliation wash over her, but before she could respond, Thaddeus was on his feet, his power filling the room like a physical force. You will apologize to my queen immediately, he said, his voice deadly calm, or you will find yourself banned from these territories for the rest of your considerably shortened life. The visiting Alpha paled. Your Majesty, I meant no offense. I was simply apologize. Now. The Alpha turned to Celeste, his face ashen. My queen, I apologize. My words were inappropriate and disrespectful. Please forgive me. Celeste wanted to shrink away, wanted to disappear. Instead, she forced herself to sit up straighter, to meet the Alpha's eyes with as much dignity as she could muster. Your apology is noted, she said quietly, but understand that disrespecting me is disrespecting the king himself, and that is not a mistake you should make twice. The dinner resumed, but the atmosphere was strained. Later that night, as Thaddeus undressed her, slowly, his hands reverent on her body, he murmured against her skin, You were magnificent tonight. The way you handled that pompous fool. You are becoming the queen you were meant to be. I did not feel magnificent, Celeste admitted. I felt small and worthless. Then let me remind you of your worth, Thaddeus said, his mouth finding her breast. Let me show you exactly how precious you are to me. He worshipped her body for hours, bringing her to climax over and over until she was sobbing his name, until she could think of nothing but the pleasure he was giving her. And when he finally entered her, it was with a gentleness that made her heart ache. You are my queen, he whispered as he moved inside her. My mate, my everything. Never doubt your worth, Celeste. Never doubt that you are exactly where you belong. The crisis came 2 months after the mating ceremony. Celeste woke one morning feeling strange, her body different in a way she could not quite identify. When she mentioned it to Thaddeus, he immediately sent for the royal healer, a kind older woman named Maris who had served the palace for decades. Maris examined Celeste carefully, then smiled. Congratulations, my queen. You are with child. The words hit Celeste like lightning, pregnant. She was pregnant with the king's heir. Through the bond, she felt Thaddeus's surge of joy, of fierce protective pride. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A child," he murmured, against her hair. "Our child. Goddess Celeste, you have given me everything." But the joy was short-lived. Within hours, word had spread throughout the palace, and by evening, Lord Brennan was demanding an emergency council meeting. When Celeste and Thaddeus entered the chamber, they found every council member present, their faces grave. "Your Majesty," Brennan began, without preamble, "we have concerns about the pregnancy." "What concerns?" Thaddeus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "The Queen has no bloodline, no proven genetics. There is a very real possibility that the child will be weak, possibly even defective. Some on the council believe that for the good of the kingdom, alternative arrangements should be made." "Alternative arrangements," Celeste repeated slowly, feeling ice form in her stomach. "What does that mean?" Brennan had the grace to look uncomfortable. "There are spells, rituals that can terminate a pregnancy in the early stages. If the child is not viable, if it would weaken the royal line, then perhaps it would be better to try again with a different mate, one with stronger bloodlines." The room erupted. Half the council members were nodding in agreement while the other half looked horrified, but Celeste barely heard any of it. All she could focus on was Brennan's words. They wanted her to end her pregnancy. They wanted Thaddeus to take another mate. After everything she had been through, after finding her place, they wanted to take it all away. "Get out," Thaddeus said, his voice so cold it could have frozen blood. "Every one of you. Get out of my sight before I do something I regret." "Your Majesty, please be reasonable," Brennan tried. "We are only thinking of the kingdom's future." "Out!" The command carried so much alpha power that every wolf in the room, regardless of rank, immediately obeyed, filing out with their heads bowed in submission. When they were alone, Thaddeus turned to Celeste and found her standing frozen, her hands pressed protectively over her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her face. "They want to kill our baby," she whispered. "They want to replace me with someone stronger." "Never," Thaddeus said fiercely, pulling her against his chest. "Do you hear me, Celeste? Never. You are my mate. This child is our child, and anyone who suggests otherwise will face my wrath." "But what if they are right?" Celeste sobbed. "What if the baby is weak? What if I have failed you?" "Stop!" Thaddeus tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "You have not failed me. You could never fail me. And our child, regardless of how strong or weak they are by someone else's standards, will be perfect because they are ours. Do you understand?" Celeste wanted to believe him, but the doubt was too strong, the fear too overwhelming. "What do we do?" she asked helplessly. "How do we fight an entire council that wants me gone?" "We do not fight them," Thaddeus said, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We prove them wrong. And I know exactly how to do it." The next morning, Thaddeus called for a full assembly of every pack in the Northern Territories. It took a week for the alphas to arrive, but when they did, the palace grounds were filled with hundreds of wolves, all wondering why their king had summoned them. Celeste stood beside Thaddeus on the palace steps, her hand resting protectively over her stomach, her heart racing with anxiety. Thaddeus addressed the crowd, his voice carrying across the assembled wolves. "I have called you here to witness something important. My mate, your queen, has been disrespected by members of my own council. They have suggested she is not worthy, that our child will be weak, that I should take another mate. And I want every wolf in these territories to hear my response to those suggestions." He turned to face Celeste, taking both her hands in his. "Celeste Ravencroft is my true mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. She is strong where it matters most, in her heart, in her courage, in her ability to love despite being hurt. And any child born of our bond will be blessed, regardless of their strength or abilities, because they will be raised with that same love and courage. He raised his voice again, addressing the crowd. I declare before all of you that any wolf who questions my mate's worth or my child's value will be considered a traitor to the crown. The Queen has my full support and my complete devotion, and that will never change. The crowd erupted in cheers and howls of support, the overwhelming majority clearly siding with their king. Celeste felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. Thaddeus had not just defended her, he had claimed her publicly, irrevocably, in a way that could never be undone. That night, as they lay tangled together in bed, Thaddeus's hand resting possessively on her stomach, Celeste finally allowed herself to believe it. She was the queen. She was valued. She was exactly where she belonged. Thank you, she whispered, for fighting for me, for believing in me when no one else did. Always, Thaddeus murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I will always fight for you, Celeste. You are my heart, my soul, my everything, and I will spend every day of our lives making sure you know it. 6 months later, Celeste gave birth to a daughter with silver eyes like her father and auburn hair like her mother. Princess Aurora was small but perfectly healthy, her lungs strong enough to make her displeasure known when she was hungry. Lord Brennan and the other dissenting council members were forced to admit they had been wrong, and several of them resigned in shame. As Celeste held her daughter for the first time, with Thaddeus beside her, looking at them both with awe and devotion, she thought about how far she had come. From a rejected, unwanted Omega to a queen and mother, from believing she was worthless to knowing her own value, from being alone to having a family who loved her unconditionally. The journey had been difficult, terrifying at times, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be, in the arms of a king who saw her true worth, in a life that was bigger and more beautiful than she had ever dared to imagine. And as Aurora curled her tiny hand around Celeste's finger, she knew with absolute certainty that she was finally, truly home.